So then what about this example? Now pay attention to her ankles. Okay, so what do we see in that example? Notice that her ankles were kind of like wobbling left and right, right? So then they were kind of like doing this. So there's a special name for that. Yeah, so what's happening is something called inversion and eversion. So when you invert, yeah, she probably didn't, I hope she didn't break anything. It was like, but she probably stretched those ligaments pretty well. She probably at least sprained something or stretched it. And yeah, she's going to be out for the next few. Definitely have to ice that after. But inversion is when you're going inwards toward the midline with the foot. So this kind of lateral movement. But eversion is going the opposite direction, so kind of splaying them out. So we're talking about this kind of lateral movement at the ankle. We're not talking about plantar flexion and dorsiflexion. Or actually, what's that term? Our friend who does dance told me it. I think if you have a dance background, I believe he called it sickling the foot, where it kind of points toward the inside instead of being straight. It's called, I guess that would be inversion, and eversion is toward the outside, toward the lateral way. Now your jaw, it has that special movement. So what we have here, well, I don't like the picture from the martini. I kind of don't get it. So we're talking about the temporomandibular joint and moving of the jaw. So does it move it forward or does it move it backwards? So when you retract something, you pull back, right? And when something protrudes, it sticks out. I think this image online is better. So what's he doing to his chin? His mandible, he's protruding his chin, right? So his protruding is protracting. Now I like this because like, man, this guy's pretty flexible. He's retracting his jaw toward the back of his head. So that's retraction. Again, it's not quite flexion or extension because it's not quite doing the kind of angular movement. And also, like, not only do you have that for your jaw, this is why, again, that the functional classifications, your jaw isn't quite a hinge joint, it's not quite a gliding joint. It's very complex. So another one it can do is the depression. So what's happening here? Like she's depressing her jaw. What happens when it's kind of depressing? Something sinks, right? So depression is depressing her lower jaw, or depressing her jaw. And when it's elevating, when you're elevating something, you're lifting it up, right? So elevation and depression are opposites. And is it only to the jaw? Well, you can also depress your shoulders. So if you have your shoulders and push it down, that's depression. But if you shrug it up, that's elevation. And those are the two examples you can think of. It's not just only for the special movement, for the jaw. And okay, so I think I forgot if it was in Martini, but they also have a special movement called excursion, where it's lateral excursion of the jaw. So if you're kind of doing this, but when you move it toward the middle, that's the medial excursion. So it's also another example of how your jaw is able to do all these movements. Like not only can you just, when you imitate someone talking, you typically do this, right? Like you act like the jaw is a hinge. But your jaw is pretty special in that it can do things like protraction, retraction, depression and elevation, and also the lateral medial excursion. So again, it's like those functional classifications, even though there are 6 types, some joints like the jaw and your knee joint, they don't quite fit neatly into just one of those classifications. And actually, even things like, the more you look at, especially if you're looking at one of the PT or orthopedic journals about joints, they'll say like, okay, a joint is primarily of this type of function, type of movement, but it also has like slight movements in the other like categories. So yeah, joints are pretty complex. And I think we're actually done ahead of time. Oh, one special movement that wasn't there is opposition and reposition. So when you hear that, you might have heard if you've done taken an ecology, evolution, or biology class, like us humans have opposable thumbs. Well, what can we do? So what we can do with our hand is we can touch our thumbs and pinky together. So this is like opposition is when you go from here and go like this. Reposition is moving it backwards. So if you've seen the example I always use, like remember the Hunger Games? So remember how like they're fighting against the capital and they're opposing the capital. What is the Hunger Games sign? They do this, right? So they oppose the capital by doing this sign. They do the opposition, and that's the movement. You go from here to here, that's opposition. And I think that's the only movement we have left. The rest are in your OpenStax textbook. And okay, so yeah, so where should you be at your studies right now? So again, if you haven't memorized all the bones and know their general locations and what they look like, that should be definitely on your list. Now for muscles, the thing about muscles is that there are so many muscles. Like you have your 206 bones, but muscles, depending on your textbook, some say like 640, 700, 800 muscles. There are a lot more muscles. So I think you don't need me to kind of like tell me where the muscles are. You already have your textbooks. So it often helps to get ahead of the game and start studying the muscles and anatomy right now, because there are so many. And if you just try to study muscles in the last week before the exam, it's going to be really, really tough. So yeah, can you be tested on opposition? It could be in there. So it could be in there somewhere. All right, so I think anything else? And so there is the joints. Now that we're done with joints, that homework should be released pretty soon. And you have your axial and appendicular homework up on Top Hat as well. I think, one common mistake people are making. So there's a bone and it says, this is a picture of the X bone. And then they would say like, okay, this is a picture of the maxillary bone. But the thing is that if you put maxillary bone in the bone part, it says, this is a picture of the maxillary bone. If bone is already there, bone should not be part of that blank in your answer. And will this exam be more diagram orientated? So I think if you're asking, like, will there be more pictures on this exam? Yes, because what? Chapters 7, 8, and 11 are all on pretty much skeletal and muscular anatomy. So you will see a lot of pictures. So this exam 2 is very visual just because there's a lot of anatomy. We have 3 chapters on anatomy. But again, is it all anatomy? Can you ignore everything cells? Because I know a lot of you love cells in chemistry. But does that mean you should ignore osteoclasts, osteoblasts, osteocytes, osteogenic cells? Should you ignore things like sarcomeres, neuromuscular junction, and the muscle tissue stuff? Again, it's the physiology and the smaller stuff that tends to separate the A's from the B's and the C's. If you have a really solid knowledge of anatomy, you should be pretty good on the exam. You'll pass, but will you get that 90-something% score? Yeah, you need to know everything we covered from chapter 6 onwards. All right. Let's see. So yeah, you definitely should use figures. And I mean, I think any figures I use in my slides or OpenStax or on the homework, they're also fair game. Like, I mean, if everyone has access to the figures, I think they're pretty legit. And actually something I might do is, especially for muscular anatomy, because there are so many muscles, and Martini has more pictures of muscular anatomy than, not to overwhelm you, but just so you get better quality pictures, I might upload the Martini pictures. But here's the thing, Pearson is notoriously litigious. So if I upload those pictures, do not upload them to Chegg or whatever, because the thing is that Pearson also has a big legal team. If they see that you're uploading their images, copyright images, and you're profiting off of it, they can subpoena that stuff. So just warning you, do not upload Pearson images. And yeah, they can't blame me because I'm saying like I only distribute it to my class. But if you put it public or if you sell it somewhere else, that's on you. So again, I don't want you subscribing to Pearson stuff, but yeah, that's why we can use it, because technically we're still using Pearson right now. But yeah, do not take their stuff, upload it anywhere for profit. Okay, so light day today. So I'll see you all on Friday. Friday is when we start talking about muscle tissue, and that's where things get pretty intense. But I mean, that's why I didn't also sandwich it on you today. So again, today's joint movements is pretty fun. And again, my tips: anatomical position, anterior, posterior for most joints except the knee, and also make sure you kind of draw that imaginary line. All right. Okay, see you on Friday, everyone. Take care and stay healthy, all right?